Hello and welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am Vesuveus. Follow me on Instagram, Vesuveusmxo. Sign up for alerts because I've got daily content on Instagram, pictures and video. Also, if you check the link in my bio, you can click through to a YouTube page where I'm uploading content monthly through the end of the year. And you can click through to my Etsy shop where I got some cool stuff on sale, like some beta hats and some Awakening sunglasses, upcoming blue sky gear. But my guest today on the podcast goes by the name of Troy Hewitt, also known as Aether. He's an original team member for the Matrix Online back in the Monolith days. He created the live events team, and he's going to tell you all about it. So, without further ado, I give you Aether. So I am here with Troy Hewitt, the original community manager for the Matrix Online, also known as Aether. So, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Really excited to be able to kind of talk about the MXO stuff. Just as a quick kind of point of clarification, not the original community person. That was Walrus, much beloved and still a dear friend of mine. Dan was phenomenal to work with. But I was the person who created from the ground up the what we called the LET, but the live events team and the event implementers that were our imps. So yeah, that was my program.
All right, and what was your official title?
So my position was community manager, and then when it became time to create this program, this live events initiative, it was like, what do you want to call yourself? And I was like, I don't even know, because calling it live events gets really confusing for people in the industry because they think shows. When I put an ad out for hiring people who have online live event experience, that didn't exist. So we were getting people that wanted to come in dressed as mascots and be ready to go to the fair dressed as a costume character, and
Cosplay.
And yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, so live events. I think I was the online live events coordinator.
Awesome. So just to bring the listeners up to speed of how you and I came into contact, I uploaded like a walkthrough of the old Pandora's box story quest, and then you had responded. You left a message like, hey, hit me up on Facebook, and we'll talk about the Matrix Online. So I did, like, almost immediately, and then you came into Discord and started sharing some stories, and we decided to put down a recording.
Yeah, you know what's hilarious about all of this is that I had actually been hanging out in Discord with everybody for a couple years now, and I had just gone through a big box of stuff from my days working on MXO, and it just brought back this flood of memories, and so it kind of activated me. But then I saw your YouTube video, and I thought, I'm just gonna reach out and talk to some folks, and yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, I'm very glad you did. I just started doing like this social media. Like my wife has been bugging me to do a blog, and I'm like, I don't want to do a blog. Like, I can't just sit there and write stuff. So I was like, I'll do an Instagram, I'll do some YouTube videos, and I'll just see. Matrix Online is something that I loved. So I figure I can blog about that, or kind of re-upload content, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm not trying to butter you up, but the notion that after all these years, there is a active, passionate community that really understood what we were trying to accomplish with live events and the story aspects of the Matrix Online. We really believed and took it very seriously that we were creating the canon for sort of what happens next in all of this. And the community really took that very seriously, and it was a lot of fun, and also a lot of work, which we can get into. But knowing that there were people who were who are still passionate about all the stuff that we've done is really incredible. And so I just couldn't help but reach out and just kind of see what everybody's up to.
Yeah, when I first saw the trailer for The Matrix Online and it said that, the players were going to dictate the future, I was instantly hooked. I really enjoyed the movies, and even those earlier games like the Enter the Matrix, it wasn't focused on Neo, so that almost like right away set the path for like, hey, this is a larger universe. So when they Path of Neo was talked about being like a Seraph game, like I almost wish they did that, just because I'm still really interested in the other things in the Matrix and not just Neo, even though he is a character that's kind of polarizing where everybody is centered on Neo, but he's kind of the clueless guy who learns along with the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and the thing about it is we really believed, or we really took the notion of the players taking control of the narrative and making decisions that would have lasting impact on what would happen in the world. Um, life or death decisions, sort of presented by imps or actors or people with a real passion to make this, the Matrix Online truly player-driven experiences. And there are a few games that have done that, and we did a lot of things that were sort of like, okay, here's a big bad thing, you got to fight it. But we did a lot more real in-depth character development and shifted and changed those characters in service to the community reactions. Um, and it lent so much depth and so much opportunity for us to really hand the reins over in some ways. And we weren't really able to speak very openly about that. And we hoped that the actions of our storylines and the things that we would write and the characters that we create to support just these really phenomenal, talk about Game of Thrones style palace intrigue. It was really, really exciting. And there was kind of this, we're going to get together and faction up, and we're going to do this in a way that allows for people um, within the matrix, when everyone's jacked in and playing, um, they were able to create enemies that out of game they were friendly and connected and passionate about the story, and so they played these phenomenal characters and groups of people off of each other. It was amazing.
It was sometimes friendly. There was, from where I sat, there was a lot of hostility, and people took things pretty seriously. It made for a very fun period of time, and I kind of wish we could get the band back together just to, now that we kind of see things a little from a wider perspective. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There definitely was some challenging folks who everybody, one of the things that's crazy is, so we put together these characters and we took it very, very seriously because of the nature of how our community looked to the content we were creating and how important it was to sort of make sure that we were doing right by them. But we also had a really heavy responsibility to Warner Brothers, the Wachowskis, and then Paul Chadwick, who's a great collaborator as a person to write with. Just he really, his commitment to putting the players, making them stars, which was, that's kind of the way I do business in general as a community manager, and a communications person, and an advocate for players to dev studios and dev teams. But this is a competitive thing for sure, and people get hungry to be the first one with the information. No
mm-hmm.
matter what, we would be swamped so badly. We would never announce that we were doing a thing, and the network that the community created, you folks were, it was just hard to do anything as a surprise or for a small group because you were all so connected that in moments we just be flooded to the point where the server would crash, or we'd be the frame rate would be so bad. But there was a lot of competition. People were often very secretive, and they didn't want to share. And anytime we as event folks would see that, well, we'd thwart it by then sending out a faction representative from the opposing faction and telling them, hey, these people have a secret going on. I think I'm, and sort of mix it up like that to ensure that it was fair.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I got some questions jotted down, so maybe we can just kind of, I know we're kind of off to the races here.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask you, just kind of leading up, like what is your background coming into and who was it that employed you first? Was it Sega? Was it Monolith? Warner Brothers? What?
It was Monolith. Monolith is the group. I had come in not necessarily knowing. So my background is human services, community building in the meat space. And which is a term I use, and if people don't get it, it's because they're not as immersed in the canon and stuff that mxo or the Matrix universe in general has to offer. But so when I say meat space, they're like, ugh, what's that? That sounds gross. But building online communities was a very natural transition for me. Working at Monolith, also avid gamer. Avid gamer to the degree, like my first love. I started gaming with Warcraft, Starcraft. We're talking the PC solo gaming, and then Starcraft was online through Battle.net, PvP kind of stuff, really competitive. Of course, Diablo, all of that stuff, and then rolled over into Ultima Online, where I became part of what they called their interest program, and that was creating events as particular characters that you would play as representatives of Origin or OSI, and planned a ton of events. And so and it was a lot of fun, but I was doing that just as a hobby, like these creating communities and doing all of that stuff. And then I realized that I could do it for money, and transitioned from working in the nonprofit world and working with Monolith, and they brought me on. And then the trajectory of the Matrix was one of challenge, and as any big endeavors are, and really, really aggressive for what they wanted to accomplish at the time, given that there weren't a whole lot of comparative things out there to kind of build a notion on. And this is all fairly new stuff. Earlier, we talked about the fact that this was 15, 16 years ago. It shocks me because I am now 28, and so the idea of how old I was when this game came out, I think it's kind of shocking what a child prodigy I was.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You're 28 years old today.
Yeah. Today's my birthday, yeah.
Oh, well, happy birthday, sir.
Thank you. Just kidding. I'm old.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the live event team process? Like, how did you develop this? This notion for putting on these large scale live events in the game.
Well, I sat down and we were struggling because of the nature of the game and how it was one of those deals where phenomenal idea, challenging execution, because of the nature of MMOs, also because of the nature of the development space. This is, as a marquee IP, there were a lot riding on expectations around how this would be created, and a lot of debate as to where would the game take place, is the world, and how far do we go at the very outset? Is it just the Matrix and the neighborhoods they're in, and can we go into Shogun world, or can we go into some of the the world or aspects of the world that you would see in some of the Animatrix stuff and all of that? It's a big deal. The story Bible was 2.5 reams of paper, and and it was challenging, big project. So it didn't hit critically as well as it probably could, and and they needed something. And so I said, well, what do you think about live events? And they were like, what could you mean? And so, having had experience, I kind of presented what this could look like, and the idea that, and basically for me, it was saying the players, the community, if you really want to make this about them, if you really want them to be the star of this, it needs more than just a magazine that comes out with mentions of what they're doing. It needs more than just a popping in game and being Morpheus for a moment and saying, or having Morpheus say from afar or atop a hill that nobody can, reach, to kind of offer Morpheus style wisdom and then vanish. That's not real interaction. That's not real. That's not allowing players to drive the plot or the story, especially if the story is I sat around and listened to Morpheus' speech again. People wanted advice from the Oracle. People wanted to fight with, Niobe or against the Merovingian, and so I kind of laid out a whole plan and kind of shared this. The interesting thing is we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the team. All we had was the idea, and then once it was accepted by the powers that be, it was move as fast as we could to develop on the fly the tools that we need to provide the nature of things. We didn't even have the power to assume the roles of these key characters, and so that had to be done on the fly as well, in an environment that was, there was some stability challenges, but yeah, they developed tools for us really quickly, and we learned along the way that we needed more, but found phenomenal writers and talent that were already existing in the GM pool. And let me be clear, there's a lot that I did to, I did create and structure the program with a lot of help, but this was a design that I had put together and then found these incredibly talented, multifaceted, multidisciplined folks that were in the GM pool, providing service to players and handling problems and handling problem players as well. But they were able to step up and help craft and create and design these moments that they could then also on the fly do some sort of like extemporaneous changing of the nature of the dialogue to suit the person or the crew or the faction that we were talking to. And that's an unbelievable skill, especially when you think of the pressure of, yeah, you got to jump on, you got to be Morpheus. Don't ruin it. Don't defame or soil the opportunities of this IP, which is closely guarded. And then also do this on every server for everybody. And so it was a big task, but that's kind of how it started, and then it just sort of developed from there once the foundation was set.
So when it came to actually executing the live events, and what was the process? Did you have like a pre-meeting? Everybody sit down at their computers? Were you on TeamSpeak? Were you on a big TV monitor in front of everybody telling them what to do? Tell me a little bit about executing those live events.
Well, one of the first challenges that we had to face was, it's one thing to have a great story to tell, and it's one thing to have the tools to be able to step in and be this character. But you've got to take care of the players to make sure that they're doing all right and that they're not feeling overwhelmed, or that if there's because we would definitely get overwhelmed in particular areas and would have contingency plans to split apart characters. Like we would drop in other characters, say, come with us this way, and players knew we were talking about there's too many people here. At the same time, we had the complexity of bad actors, like players who really were there just to be troublemakers, and to ruin events or try to ruin them. For instance, you would have, a Morpheus would come, and I keep talking about Morpheus just because I'm looking at one of the old magazine, the official magazine, and it has Morpheus on the cover. But we would come in with these characters, but we would have to try to tell stories or provide clues while you had a ton of people spamming us or standing over us and all of that. So there's that aspect. And then there was the aspect of just trying to get the message out to as many people as possible so that everybody felt like they had a role and an opportunity to participate. And that we weren't, if there was some kind of a battle, which often there was, that we weren't creating a situation where anybody felt like they weren't into battle, so they couldn't, we had to appease a lot of different kinds of players and then deal with all the tech issues and then stay within the realms of the storyline that we would write. So we would sit down as a group and I would lay out sort of the plan using the resources that I had, and then we would create a kind of a storyboard of sorts, but think storyboard without any art because we didn't have the time. But we would do things like name the event, like the death
of the Destroyer.
What was that?
Death of the Destroyer.
Yeah, Death of the Destroyer. I'm looking at the write-up that I put there right now. And it would be day one. So in his quest to find the remains of the One, Morpheus encountered an individual known as the Puzzle Maker. And we'd throw these ideas out, and people just roll with it. And thought at times that we were pulling information out from an official source, but we were putting it together in a way that paid homage, that was in homage to the content, but we would also just kind of do our own stuff because we would know that's what players like. And then so we have this, I have 3 pages that start out with day 1, day 2, all the way through day 5, and we would end with very clear expectations as to what would happen or what should happen in the service of making this interesting and engaging for players. For instance, I'm looking at the Death of the Destroyer event breakdown, which is funny because I'm also looking at all my notes and things on here, which don't necessarily make a lot of sense out of context, but we broke it down for every faction as to what they would get to do. But I'm looking here, it's like some of the things. So what players do. So Shades and Dominion drop collectible tokens that will go towards lottery to choose Killer, Healer of the Assassin. Do you remember how that event kind of played out?
Yeah, I was a noob at that point. I just remember getting killed a lot.
Right. Well, we actually created a system of where players would be able to vote with these tokens to say they're going to get the tokens, the lottery. They're going to choose whether they're going to kill or heal the assassin who was there to take care of some business, and that allowed
that does sound familiar.
Choice and empower this. And and the assassin was a character we played, but that was the kind of opportunity for us to play around with mechanisms that allowed for players to establish their mark. Their vote was, by being involved, they were excited, but by taking that token and saying, "This, I want you to be the killer," or I want you. I'm healing you because I want you to succeed in your mission as the assassin, or I am going to work against you I'm going to stop you from your attempts to kill Morpheus. And then and at some, I'll actually take some screenshots of this so you can include it with any write-ups, but you can kind of see what it is that it looks like and how we did it. But we also talked about the fact that you'd find for each day, like for instance for the first day, you'd find code capsules that we hid all over the place. You'd fight the corrupted shadow. You collect the pieces of the capsules and then you turn them into the collector. Try to solve the Oracle's puzzle. That was part of the deal. And it's this particular event is a 2-page write-up, full page write-up of 11-point font. It's a lot of information, but the thing about everything that we would do is so when these events would kick off, we would create a war room where all of the folks, all of the imps would be sitting together and helping and being ready to handle any of the contingencies that might pop up after we, after the initial sort of brainstorming. Then imps would take over. We would script very specific interactions, making sure that we didn't deviate from the intended impact unless something happened that was stability related, or we made a miscalculation about how players would react. And then we would find ways to kind of shut things down without being too abrupt, unless it was a server shutdown. And then we just all lost. But the important thing was, after every event, after every in-game interaction, we would measure how many people were there, because we put mechanisms in place that would allow for us to count in a proximity the number of people in that space. That was later expanded to allow us to mechanically then award items and consumables to people who participated, because it was critical that everyone feel like they could be around, and not just the folks who were, there first, but people who just showed up to be a part of it. And then at the end of every event, we would get together and we'd talk about what happened. What do we like? What do we hate? What did we learn about sentiment? How did the players feel about the experience? And what did we learn about ideas that the players had that oftentimes were way better than ours? And then shift the event to be reasonably similar to that, and then maybe throw a wrench in there to make it fun, so that people weren't like, oh, this is, I was right, or and have it be so easily sussed out as to what the solutions may be or what the outcome might be, but to also, in a sort of wink, nudge kind of way, say, we hear you and we hear what you're saying and we see what you're doing, and we want to reward that ingenuity by listening and being responsive. And so a lot of our events would shift and change, and the dialogue, and there'd be people who were just like, no, we really need to talk to, we need to get to the Merovingian, who wasn't even a part of particular storylines, and we'd be like, oh, okay, well, it looks like it's time to get the Merovingian ready to go, and and really try to do as much as we could to meet those needs, balancing that, of course, against the fact that there were so many servers. We had to, across many time zones, we would have to run a series of events that were 10 to 15 minute events, which were just drive-by, running around, bouncing, doing some stuff that may or may not be related to the main story. Then there'd be kind of half-hour quick missions. Someone stops by, help, I need somebody to find me the X or the Y or the Z, and you go and you do the thing and you're done. And then the larger kind of serial episodic storylines that would run over the course of weeks and ultimately months, as we tied all the threads together.
Yeah, it definitely meant a lot for the players to be involved in these things and be around them. I always remember going to the forums after an event and just reading up on it, trying to get any of the details that I had missed, checking to see who was in like the screenshots that were posted. Like those things meant a lot to people, especially if they were items given out. People are always posting screenshots, and then they become a popular player because now everybody wants to try and see if they can get that item from that person. The assassin mask was like the big one.
Yeah.
That thing still lives in infamy to this day. But moving on, I was going to ask you about Paul Chadwick. He kind of took over writing the storyline for the Matrix Online. What was your working relationship with him? What was he like to work with? Was he a slave driver or what?
Not at all. And actually, I was very humbled to have had the opportunity. It was it was so very early in my career. The opportunity to work with Paul was really a huge shift in my just understanding what my career was about. When I looked to him for, because we run our ideas by him, and he would, with so much sort of excitement and joy, just dig in and be like, I like these ideas. This is really good. And then maybe we can do that. Maybe. And so Paul had, in the any time that we worked with him, certainly all of us had a commitment to not messing up or committing any crimes specific to things like IP. But he was a partner in helping us get our most creative ideas in. And I'll tell you one thing: the moment that Paul and I were able to connect on the very simple fact that we were there for the players and we felt it and we knew it, he was so committed to the idea that players need to be the star. And I think, and I'm supposing, but I always felt like Paul, as a creator of kind of these worlds, through comic book and writing, the notion of being able to create a living comic book or a living world where fantastic things can happen, it really gave me insight into, Paul's work that he does in writing and comic book and all of that is total devotion to the experience that the user is having. So absolutely charming to work with, very, very understanding of what it was we wanted to accomplish, and an incredible mentor in the balancing the needs of the IP and all of that against the requirements that we had for making this a player-driven experience. So it's, phenomenal to work with. Absolutely the greatest, and I've had many phone calls with him. I had many meetings with him. We'd sit around a conference room, and at no point in time, at first we were all terrified just because Paul Chadwick and his body of work, but he was a really phenomenal resource. He was a very authentic, he remains an authentic, kind human being, and a joy to work with. And I don't think he realizes the impact that he made on us, the live events team, for him just to be so open and so, it was all very accessible, and there was none of this sort of gatekeeping. He was just in it for the joy of creating these stories that would depend on the players to really see them unfold. So it was awesome, and I know I'm gushing, but he deserves that kind of admiration and adoration. He walks it like he talks it.
Yeah, he did an interview at like a Sony block party, like after a Comic-Con, and that's the most insight that I have to how he was, and he was very engaging with the news team that was there. It was just a bunch of players and a player-run radio station, and he answered all their questions and he hung out with them. Walrus was there as well, and he just seemed like a very reserved guy and a very methodical guy, and he tried not to give too much away, but he tried to tease a little bit. And that's a recording that I have. I actually I uploaded it to my YouTube just because it's one of those things. It's gonna be lost on somebody's hard drive. It probably has been for the last 10 years. So I was like, this thing's got to be out and posted, and people have to experience this kind of stuff. At least every couple of years.
Yeah, because it is, it's a good thing that happened. And there were a lot of, challenges around MXO as a project. But one of the things that everybody can say without worry or shame or fear of hyperbole, the live events and the guts and the heart and the soul that went into creating those, that was a big project. But a lot of it wouldn't have been able to be done if it weren't for, Paul. He was just as excited as players were to see it unfold. He was there for it. Yeah.
So, and you guys pretty much picked up the Matrix after the Matrix Revolutions and kind of pushed forward the storyline. What was your feeling like leaving the movie theater after Revolutions and then picking and getting an opportunity to move that story forward. Like, what did that mean to you?
We took it very, very seriously. I'll tell you, I had just gotten into the storyline of it all, and embraced the position of doing the live events stuff. Went through the whole, oh, I'm working on the Matrix storyline, canon, all of this stuff. We like I said before, it was very important for us to create, quality that would meet the expectations of the players, but also everybody participating. We loved the Matrix. We loved it. We loved all of the opportunities and the philosophical ponderings, and you can talk about going down the rabbit hole, but for us, it was remarkable. But then to be walking around in the world, I remember going out with some friends to celebrate this accomplishment, which to me meant a great deal and had a lot of gravity for in how I looked and thought and felt about it. But I'll tell you, when I went to they took me out to a club here in Seattle, and after dinner, and sat down, and they had the Matrix playing on the television, and it was kind of all over the place. And this club it kind of felt like a club that you would see in the Matrix. Everyone was sort of strutting around in there. And that's actually why they took me there, because it's sort of this. It just looked like a club that you would see, Persephone kicking around in, with a bunch of folks wearing, various shades of leather clothing and whatever. And I thought, that's something that I'm working on. This is really a big deal. And we also wanted to know, like, where is Neo? What's going on? Who's this? And what's the real story? And is there the Matrix in the Matrix? And and we were all over that stuff. And every once in a while, still kind of go and look and see what the latest thoughts are on what's happening in the world, because I know a lot of people weren't certain. Spoiler, 15, 16 years later, but Morpheus dead. Or is he? I don't know. But we took it real seriously, and being able to walk out and and we also watched every tiny thing we can get our hands on specific to the Matrix, and took a lot of ideas or sort of inferences, and then presented it in a way that also then allowed players to put their mark on what their thoughts and ideas may be specific to what things really mean. And it was a blast. So we took it real seriously, and we were very, very focused on what are the loose ends, or what are some things that we can pull out of dialogue and then bring it back from all of the movies. And especially, Animatrix had a huge influence on storyline stuff, and it really gave us this place of going, wait, there's some really creative, amazing things going on here. How can we adopt some of those pieces, add some texture and some fire, and then also not just run roughshod over some of the mystery, because that was as much the driver of people getting engaged and involved. They want to solve a mystery, but they don't want to solve it all. You know what I mean? They want, like, that mystery it keeps you jacked in. So hopefully, I'm rambling a bit, but as I start to refresh the synapses and the parts of my brain, and remembering the experience, it was impactful on my life personally, as a early career provider of social experiences in video games. But everybody that participated as well, we took it real serious.
It's funny that you mentioned that the Matrix was playing in this club. I had a very similar experience. I went to a dance club. It was like a techno club or something.
Yeah.
For early 20s. And they played the red pill choice scene where Morpheus is offering the pill to Neo, and of course went off into techno. So yeah, man, that it must have been nationwide. I'm out here in New York, You know,
I'm in
so
Seattle,
I
yeah.
assume you're West Coast. Yeah, so the Matrix really was culture back in the early 2000s.
It still remains so for those kinds of clubs with that whole take the red pill. You know, like I
Yeah.
totally know what track you're talking about. And that was something, yeah, it was definitely fascinating to be a part of this very interesting cultural phenomena. That, by the way, here we are talking about this. It never stopped. You know what I mean? It didn't. The interest in the Matrix and the depth of what it meant to be a part of that really resonated with a lot of people like you and additional folks that keep popping up over the last couple of days, and seeing folks in Discord and all the conversations that they're having.
Hmm.
Um, it, it as a cultural bit of business, it made a bigger impact than I think people really understood.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was widespread. It was very cool. It translated to MMO very well. And admittedly, this was my first online game, my first massively multiplayer online roleplay game, and it's really been my only one. But it's just so deep. There's so many layers to it that it's something that I still learn about. There's still stories out there that I appreciate, and the artwork is, of course, absolutely wonderful, even from the players, which is what my Instagram account is like all about.
You're so good at curating all that stuff, and the creativity that the Matrix canon has afforded. It is a puzzler for folks to kind of dig deep into their own perception of what the world's all about. And some people do take it to a weird place, and they get a little deeper than I care to invest my personal currency in. But I do like the discussion of who are we? What am I in relation to the larger mechanism of consumerism or capitalism or humanism or all of that stuff? It offers a real opportunity for you to explore that stuff. And the notion, I mean, my friend, you were a part of helping tell the story of the next piece of the Matrix. Like you were a contributor to the canon, and you still get it and are still committed, and you're sharing and creating and supporting this idea. It's beyond just looking back and wishing for the good old days, which we all do to a degree. Um, but I do think that there is a value here that offers a deeper look into who you are as a human and how you evaluate the world at large. Um, and I think it makes us better people for it. And so the Wachowskis and their creation here, and of course, it's a all of the things. There are many people who helped contribute to how it looked because it was cool and it looked amazing. But they struck a chord with people, philosophical kind of existential. Who am I? Am I a cog? Am I a battery for the charging of a system that I'm not in control of? Or can I step outside of what I'm supposed to do, break some rules, and end up being a very different person with my eyes open? It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think everybody kind of goes through that. It's like a coming of age thing,
Yeah,
It's you get to a certain age where you just naturally question, your existence, and the kind of person that you want to be, and so the Matrix is just a super cool 2 hour version of that.
yeah.
And if you've ever had a job that you don't like, oh my god, the Matrix, I had a job I really did not care for a couple of years, and I would think about the freaking pods all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like you look at that, yeah, you see, Neo when he's, Mr. Anderson is not having a good time, and you can see the drudgery, the misery, and the all of that. But the coming of age thing is definitely in there. But I also think that the extra added hook is that the notion introduced was about constant renewal or constant thinking about where you're at, and it was the understanding that needing the wanting of something more is natural, but the continual self-discovery and self-evaluation and evaluating the world around you is just as crucial, because once you take the pill, then you realize all this other stuff. Well, there are onions of, layers of this onion rather to kind of unpeel, and it never stopped. And that's one of the things that we try to do with our live events, is just to really build layers of opportunity for people who were real good at the game and wanted PvP, or people who were just wanted to crack the code on what the last clue meant, or people who just wanted to be in the proximity of Morpheus because they just wanted to be there. They wanted to be a part of it. And so we really tried to provide as many layers as people chose to kind of peel. And yeah, it was a challenge, but it was fun.
Yeah, and it certainly worked. There were things where people were very fulfilled. There was things where noobs like me were, completely excited to just be around live event characters. There were people. I remember this one person, Morpheus spoke to this person, and they made like a forum signature out of Morpheus's quote. And it actually kind of leads into my next couple of questions, because I got some questions about the death of Morpheus. I was one of those those people that really believed that it was some kind of plot twist and that he was going to come back. I wound up accepting that, well, he's just completely out of the story, and he was replaced with like a simulacrum, which was when the simulacrum started working with the Merovingian. That was actually a very interesting plot twist for me. It was something that I kind of was like, no, Morpheus is a good guy. He's supposed to just emulate Morpheus. And no, that did not happen.
And people were really mad about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, the thing, my first question is, whose call was that? Was that Wachowski's? Was that Paul Chadwick? Or, who?
So, interesting question. Here's what it boiled down to, sort of in the real. We were talking about, as advocates on behalf of the active community of people who were playing and engaging, and even the people who were like, I hate events and were jerks, would then be just hooked, so we were able to kind of really make an impact and show some very demonstrable improvements. People who participated in live events stuck around longer, participated more, they stuck around longer as far as the lifetime of a person who is playing a game. Like, they logged in more regularly, but they also played longer in game, because we did a lot of things that would say, here we are, we got some clues, we got some stuff, and gotta go. But the players then would take the ball and they'd run with it, and then they started creating their own intrigues and all of that stuff. The challenge is that when you look at the cinematics, and we were in game, acting as these really incredible characters, but they are Hollywood stars. They're expensive, and there's no way that you can't have Lawrence Fishburne as the voice of Morpheus. Like, he can get away. We faked it with Merovingian, as everyone can tell. But Morpheus, the character that Lawrence Fishburne brought to life, you can't have a similarly sounding character. You had to have the man, and as a talented, well established fixture in the landscape of storytelling in Hollywood, and deservedly so, earns a lot of money for doing VO work or whatever it is, and it became a question of expenses versus what it was that we were accomplishing. But then it also became a question of, what do we do in the can't afford to continue to kind of invest in this, but the Morpheus character, so critical, so crucial to a player's view of themselves in the world, and everybody, Morpheus was kind of everybody's mentor and guide. And before players would even jump in MXO, Morpheus was the person that opened up a world of new thought and new evaluation of your own abilities to master the mystery. So killing him off was a big deal, and the Wachowskis had to approve it. It's sort of like one of those, budget says this, and we gotta kind of solve for this, and a lot of different ideas were thrown about. At the end of the day, it was a question of, we definitely can't utilize Lawrence Fishburne for VO all the time, but it was an important piece of this. And so the decision that Morpheus had to go was a tough one. But I'll tell you that because The Matrix is what it is, there are aspects of this that probably are better told by some other folks, and we can explore that in the future. And I'd love to introduce some of the other event implementers or imps, but also some other people who were a part of the decision-making process. But bringing forward the is he dead, is he not, Morpheus working with the Merovingian, that's not really him, is it him, and all of that stuff was meant as a opportunity and fertile ground for future storytelling, because where is Morpheus? Did he die? And one of the big story points is, where's Neo? And where are his remains, and why can't we get them? And why can't we know what's happening? And all of that was meant to be challenging the notion of permanence and all of that, and really making sure that people understood that they had a role in sort of deciding how these things were going to roll out. Sometimes the end could, it was predetermined by dint of just general expectation. Like, it was a business, we were running a business of entertainment through online space, a massively multiplayer online game. But we also needed to make it interesting, but we couldn't do anything definitive that would then destroy opportunities in the future. And so, yeah, it didn't come lightly, but any of the interesting, strange, questionable, all of the stuff that happened afterwards was a way to say tacitly, or to share, that you don't really know, and we don't really know. And a lot of what happened with the stories that we told were driven by the hopes and the dreams of the players that participated, of the community that rallied around the great, deep, fun storyline. So the power is yours, and the power is ours as people who love the IP and love the notion of these characters and the roles that they play. I wouldn't be surprised if, based on what happened, that you see in the future opportunities for more animated stuff, but I speak to this with absolutely no insider knowledge of what is currently going on. I will say that as a concept, The Matrix is a pretty heady one, and a really deep and very taxing. And so I can respect that Wachowski is getting to a point of saying, listen, I can't think about this anymore. Like, The Matrix is what you make it, and we're done. But there are no new ideas, and if they can reboot Scooby-Doo for blank's sake, then we can, look at a deeper kind of what happens next in The Matrix. So, is he dead forever? Absolutely possible. Maybe that he is not.
Yeah, I would love to see more content. I'm personally on board with a Star Wars Rebels, like a young Morpheus, because some of the stuff that was talked about in the storyline of him visiting the Oracle and becoming, like, he's told that he's going to find the one. So he's like, all right, well, I guess I can't die until I find the one.
Right.
So I'm just gonna, and now he's basically a superhero, which is really cool. I think that that's 3 seasons right there of a animated show.
Yeah, and what a weird thing to truly as a individual to believe with depth and with conviction, which is a rare opportunity for humans to have just absolute conviction in a belief, whether it be religious or in yourself. But if you suddenly look about you and the world that you see before you is not the world that you thought it was, and then this Oracle character, which is one of my favorite characters, one of the, just a beautiful, interesting opportunity to have this person to say, no, you are special and you are destined to find the one. And until you find the one, you're not going to, you will live to until you need to find the one. And you talk about like being, suddenly being, having superpowers, like being able to bend the matrix to his will, in the way that he could, and then to also know, until I find the one, I'm on that mission to find the one. That's got to be a bit of a head trip to kind of work through. Like you can't die until you find the one. So, but that's what you need, and you're committed to doing so. So, take those risks. Gather those, true believers, and find the folks that can handle the transition from, walking around and eating delicious steak, to being in the real and eating gruel and realizing that it's all a lie. Yeah, deep stuff.
Very cool. Lots of possibilities. One more question about the Morpheus character pertaining to the game was, I was a beta tester. I bought my way in. I pre-ordered. The cinematic where he was shot and killed was in beta. Was that a mistake? Did that leak somehow? Because I remember maybe they'll change it for when it's live, and then it didn't. It was the same thing going live. So why was that in beta? That was kind of a major spoiler.
I gotta tell you, my friend, you MXO community members, there was never a moment of peace wherein we would make a mistake or we would try to, put some stuff together, and you all were so good that you, just with your network alone, I don't know where you were hanging out, because this was, maybe you were doing TeamSpeak, because we did not do TeamSpeak. We tried to infiltrate where you were talking. We tried to join, forums and whatever. We just needed to figure out how the heck were you cracking the code on this stuff. But I will tell you that when that cinematic played, you were giving me a stomach ache remembering it was 100% a mistake. We were not supposed to be able to share that information, or we weren't, that was a spoiler deluxe, and it was so painful that that's what happened. And we had to kind of, we just sort of amped and did our thing, but the reality was, oops, and we weren't, we were not expecting that to occur. But that's video games for you. You just never know how all that stuff's gonna roll out. But
hey, that's beta testing.
Yeah, well, not only is that beta testing, but the MXO community in general, I'm telling you, you people, top to bottom, no matter what faction you were in, there was no, and this is MMO players in general, video game players in general, very smart folks, but there was a very cerebral aspect to what we were trying to accomplish. You all were just super smart and much smarter than us. And so then we had to try to do these red herrings of that didn't happen or this didn't happen, but not feed it so much so that at the end of it, here we are 15 or so years later, and you're like, that was a mistake, right? And I'm here to say, yeah, we botched that one. That was on us.
Well, personally, I got over that pretty quickly. I just, I wasn't connected. When you say they were very connected and they were talking, I wasn't in on all of those things until much later when I got brought in. I felt like I had to hang around and really prove my mettle to the other community members who were in the know. But I just chalked it up to, well, this is the beta test, and
Yeah, very, very justifiably, people were real upset. But I also want to say, I actually have a question for you. One of the things that was important to us is that we talked about this a little earlier, but that we provide a texture of events and opportunities that span the drive-by, um, and then increase in intensity and time and commitment, but that everything that we did always felt accessible. um, it was really important to us that, and we would identify regular people that would pop up and be around, but wouldn't necessarily engage or talk to us, and we would do things to them. We would, knowing that they were excited to be around, but maybe nervous because they weren't the most, they weren't the top of the leaders of the faction or whatever it was that was going on. It was really important for us to find those people that knew that they loved what they were experiencing but didn't quite know exactly how to get our attention, and so we hunted for those people at events and listed their names. And I actually am looking at some paperwork right now, and of the event write-ups that I put together, and during events, after the event we'd be like, who needs love, who needs to be thanked with an event because of something amazing they did that made the event more accessible, and who was the person that was there that you noticed, and who are they, and what do they do, and what are they a part of, and we wanted to make sure everyone felt rewarded. That was our intention. Did you feel that?
I saw some of it. I didn't personally experience it. I was like, when I say I was a noob, I had to play this game for well over a year in order, like, before I really got it. Before I really got the combat well, I never really got the combat system.
Nobody
But
ever really did, by the way. So yeah, yeah. I mean, people might say they do, but we didn't know we were doing when it was being built. So yeah.
well, some people got very good at it, and probably, with some exploiting and everything else going on. But it was just a little difficult for me to wrap my head around all the aspects of the MMO and get in on the live events.
Oh, right. Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. Absolutely. But did you feel as a new player that it was accessible, or did you feel like you're clearly connected to kind of the large, like what happened in that game space? Why still, and did we have an impact on that as event, live events team implementers?
Well, I'll say, like, things would pop up in the system chat. I particularly remember I was trying to grind my way up to max level, and these things start scrolling across the screen. Morpheus is setting off code bombs in Richland or Westview or whatever, and I was like, oh man, like, I just want to, like, level up so I can go to things like this and be effective. So I remember being, like, a little torn. So I just, like, canceled the mission and tried to, like, find it. And
Common complaint. Yeah. We did try to do events where folks could be of, sort of lower level and be able to participate. But I will also admit that we also were really pushing and challenging players to become more adept at gameplay, even though it was, and many will, attest to, and you as well, I'm sure, it could be a little punishing, a little obtuse to try to figure out how to do all of these things. And as somebody who was an actively working in-game kind of person, I was never good at the combat at all.
I would go to these things. My computer wasn't very good, so I would lag. So I was conflicted. I wanted to participate so badly, but I did have, some challenges on doing that. I also think that, as developers, when you guys are trying to push a story forward, it's hard to work with somebody who might be lagging out and they're not responding to you. So, you probably had a running list of people that you could throw to, and they would kind of carry it a little bit.
We try not to do that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have stuff like that. Otherwise, everything comes to a screeching halt.
Oh, yeah. Or standing there, and then also there would be times where we wouldn't realize we were timed out, but there'd be a whole event going on with, a character just standing there. And people are like, okay, great.
Well, it's an MMO.
Absolutely, yeah, and fortunately, computers have come to a place where there's some great things going on, by way of like specific to technology and stability and all of those sorts of things. One of my biggest regrets, when I look back on what could have been, is when you look at the Matrix, and what it was, especially at the end of the cinematic sort of explanation, then it became a playground of some pretty incredible stuff. Um, like we could do Western world. Players could create a space that would be steampunk, and the character creation and the opportunity for us as live events people to help usher in those new spaces or worlds, or celebrate or support players that were doing live events, which we did a lot of. Was we were looking forward to that opportunity. The Matrix is it was just like the perfect MMO. It could have been, as a concept, was the perfect MMO. It could have been a lot of different, could have been everything to everyone, depending on what you wanted, and more. And we really wanted to usher in the next phase for us was to build, the tools for players to then start to create their own stuff and be the ones driving the story and all of that stuff within a sanctioned, live event experience. And that was right about when things got shut down. Folks will remember we were taking applications and talking to people and getting ready to roll that out, with mad props to, and deep respect and thanks to the Origin, OSI's creation of the interest program for, Ultima Online. There was a lot of that, the heart and soul of what that experience was. We poured it over to MXO. By we, I mean me, and created that opportunity for players to make a difference. So yeah.
So are we kind of getting into the Sony Online transition from Monolith to Sony?
Yeah. What do you what would you like to know?
Well, what was that? What was that like for you? You say you're in the middle of expanding, and probably the car came to a screeching halt. It feels like.
It did, yeah. It was, I'll be real honest, it was a real heartbreaker. And when the information got out that that's what was occurring, I knew it was coming. I knew the announcement was coming. Because if you remember as well, we also started using, AIM, in game, to be able to, create another layer of texture so that players like Morpheus, Niobe, and Merovingian, and Persephone, and on the list goes, they could we created accounts that you could actually text with, and that
Mm-hmm.
was integrated into the game. And, people are, again, Matrix Online players. There's just they are remarkably resilient. They are really smart, and they were able to find my personal contact information. And it was probably, I don't
Oh,
know what time it was when the announcement went out. They found out my personal information, and I heard, I was laying in bed and I heard my PC go bing, 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 and I'm like, what is happening? Like, there's something going down. And I
holy
ran
shit!
to my, PC and turned it on. It was everybody saying, Ether, is this true? Is it true? Is this Ether? Are you Ether? And it was just a deluge of people, in shock and upset, and it was really heart wrenching. More so, for what the impact was on the live event implementers who have gone on to various, kinds of careers within the industry, whether they're designers, system designers, you name it, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And some folks went into totally different industries because it was heartbreaking. And it was a real rude awakening to the difference between the, like, if you're somebody working to create these stories, you're in it. You're doing it for the passion and the love just as much as the players are playing and enjoying it. And you live to create these wonderful wow, oh my gosh moments. But then to have that all stop, and then to know that it was going to somebody else, and that somebody else would step in and kind of try to, you know, to kind of animate the work that you were doing, reanimate. Was really painful for a lot of us, and we just had to kind of shut off. And for a long, long time, until I was able to kind of come to terms, I couldn't deal with anything Matrix Online related.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was painful. But
That's tough.
I believe that Rarebit and the work that he did to carry the torch. Rarebit and I don't know him personally, and I don't like after when the live events that we did our last sort of get together. I remember it was at a karaoke bar called the Rickshaw here in Seattle. We commiserated, but we had a lot of fun. But we had to like divorce ourselves, and we'd have players that go, "What could this mean?" or give us a clue afterwards, and we'd kind of hound us a bit about what was going on, and we'd ignore it, and much to the dismay of the players. But we just weren't equipped to be able to meddle. And also Rarebit and team over at SOE, a Walrus went over there. They needed the space to do their thing. Our time was over, painful as it was, but we needed to make room for, Rarebit and the stuff that he worked on. And he became kind of a solo hero. And really, it's funny because people are like, "Oh, I remember hearing about the stuff that you had done." But there are many, many people who were very well entertained and very well taken care of by the work that he did to keep the fires burning and to keep people excited. But it was a one-man show.
Yeah, and he wound up doing some cinematics as well, and
Right?
incorporated
Yeah.
some of his art, which I still follow him on like Instagram. He's a hell of an artist, and he, it seemed like the community was very understanding and very behind him, as well as unhappy with the state. But it was like everybody really supported Rarebit and understood that he was limited and tried to get everything that they could out of the game and their subscription and everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so major kudos to him. And I would actually love to sit down and have a chat with him. I'm not even sure if he's still in the Puget Sound area. Um, because again, me popping in and having these conversations with you is a very recent. Here we are 15 years later, or 15 or plus years later, and I'm only now being able to talk about it without being furious, and to look back on it with the fondness and the ability to reflect on how remarkable it was, and then to also feel good enough about how things happened to look back on what Rarebit did, and to hear about it and know he took good care of us. Like, he took good care of the work we were trying to do and of the community that we love and loved so deeply that we would stay up to the latest we could, working 18-hour days, and sometimes sleeping and falling asleep in the office, so that every server got a taste of an event, and to know that he kind of took that torch and kept the fires burning, is a real testament to his commitment to the community and the fact that he got it like you and I do.
Well, I definitely have to say thank you for kind of revealing that fourth, or pulling back the curtain and telling us everything that was involved in delivering the content, even though, so many years later, I feel like there was so much that, like, I still go on some of the archives, and I'll just pull up like an old storyline and just start reading it, and I'm like, this is like really, really detailed. This is something that I feel like the Matrix, every time like a gaming website talks about the Matrix Online, they call it like a mixed bag. Like, it was revolutionary, but it had some flaws here, and that was its downfall. But I kind of feel like this attempt, this live events team, and rolling out the content in this way is revolutionary. I feel like, and I'm not in the industry, but I feel like it's had an impact on the industry, and that there are other games that have learned from what you did and are going forward with that.
Yeah, and let me tell you this: that while I created a structure and was inspired by the work that I was able to perform, working on being in seer and then an ancient seer in the UO storytelling kind of interest program, the work that we were able to accomplish, the team, those live events, implementers, the imps were brilliant. Um, they were amazing. They were under huge pressure. In the future, one other day, I'll tell you some other stories and some hilarious stuff that um, that went down. But it was it was great. It was. I do believe that it was something that really was remarkable and unique, and people have, I think, adopted bits or pieces of it. But I'll tell you, I don't think that they. I've yet to see the thing that came as close to what we were able to offer, and the care and concern that we took for telling a good story, but making sure that players felt like they could be the star. And this was a team of, I want to say it was 8, 9, it could be 10ish folk. Um, but they were also empowered to really take care of players, and they cared and they did it. And that's not to say other companies do not, but what we did was a unique and successful implementation, and the imps as delivers of content and all of the things that they had to worry about were phenomenal. Like, really, they deserve the lion's share of credit for understanding and being sensitive to what the players need. And I was incredibly lucky to be a part of it.
The game was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I think that we only pray that something comes back around for the Matrix Online, even if it's just like the source code. But just kind of going from that position and then it kind of going away. Did you springboard off into something else? Did you consult with another company? Did you use this experience for further career?
Oh yeah. Well, and not even really knowing the impact that it made on me until I moved through my career. Um, but it opened up a lot of doors for me to understand how community management should work, and how
Mm-hmm.
the tools that allow players to interact with, to share sentiment, to feel heard, to feel supported and empowered, that's not a thing that people make really well. The tools are always a slap, like, okay, we're gonna tack on forums. We're gonna maybe we've got support stuff, we've got all this other thing, but that always happens kind of towards the end of the project. I've been able to carry with me an understanding that social systems within the game, sharing information, being able to have mechanisms of players rewarding players for good work done, for players to group up, to team up, both casually for a moment and partnering together to get a thing done, beyond just hoovering up a bunch of missions. There needs to be an X factor that is sort of this, that shakes it up. But also, players need to feel that beyond just being competitive and I'm going to do a thing and I'm going to win because I'm the best player, there needs to be surprise and delight. And the players need to drive some of that, not just by the sentiment they share through complaints or concerns in forum or in other avenues, but that story is important, and user generated content. And at the end of the day, we really tried to be vessels of what players want. They wanted to be a part of the Matrix. They wanted to be a star of the Matrix. We wanted that to happen as well. Looking to things like, the games that I worked on after that were really about, and everything that I've worked on since has been about incorporating players as a key figure in decision making when appropriate and where appropriate, but user generated content allowing the players to make a mark in the space that they're in as players, as a reward, not just for participation, but because they're the gamer lifestyle at the time was just sort of like, gamers are like trapped in their grandma's basement and blah blah blah. But we all know that that was an inaccurate and very pejorative way to describe gamers, to dismiss the community. Gaming has evolved to be something huge, There were some, and people are engaged. I think it informed me that players want to own a piece of what it is that they're doing and to make a good contribution. Not in replace of the contributions they should be making in the real world, but as a way to relax and celebrate and have fun and achieve in the hour to maybe 3 hours they have a night, or even a week sometimes if you've got kids and a family. So it really just changed the way that I saw community, and it was less about we got to control the people who are saying nasty things. It was we got to listen to the people who are saying nasty things because they're trying to get our attention, and that may be the only way they know how to do it. And give them an opportunity to make a difference. And I've done everything in my power to, in every job that I've ever worked at, um, ensure players have that voice. And whether it's creating systems like working with a team to create WildStar housing, which was a critical. I was a producer on that particular slice of the project, or really supporting UI UX mods in Pirates of the Burning Sea to really support and maintain the creation of ships and the putting your own sails and flags within the game, to even the work that I'm doing now, which is really about creating programs that allow people who are really into the product, that they're excited about, to be the creators and the writers, and the tabletop gaming is a big part of it as well. Um, Telling your own stories and being recognized as a big contributor to the lore to make it important. And it's interesting that I say all this stuff and I look back. Matrix Online really informed all that for me.
So, and particularly, which projects have you been working on in the last couple of years?
All right, let me pull up my LinkedIn. No, hey, so Pirates of the Burning Sea, right after MXO, many many years ago. After that, I moved to California, which was huge because I'm Washington born and bred, and worked for 5 years on WildStar. Started out as a producer and community nerd and associate producer actually, and then I think I got promoted two maybe three times. Then became like producer alongside a bunch of other folks who were doing that work. But really was able to dig in on social systems, so like housing, and to create real world opportunities, working with a phenomenal events team through NCSoft, but to do events like the Arc Ship, where people got to come down to the studio and be flown in from all over the place. Then moved back home after sadly the passing of my father, and had to be here to support my family as the oldest grandchild, and the first grandchild and the oldest in my family. I had to come back and take care of family. Got the phenomenal opportunity to work at Motiga on a game called Gigantic, kind of a 5v5 arena style game. Another great community, but was able to build community coaches program. I'm not good at naming things, so but they made a huge contribution to the game. And then as many people have seen across the industry, we can't all be WoW and no one will be. We can't all be League and no one will be. But a lot of times people spend too much time trying to, be the League killer or the WoW killer. And every time I hear that, it was just like, it would drive me crazy and I'd grind my teeth. Nobody in the studio would say that, but the Gigantic didn't quite make it out of the didn't quite hit critical, I would say, consumer success, but critical accolades for sure. And the community there still very connected with them as folks, and we're very proud of the community interaction. After that, decided to found a startup, and did that for a bit. Was the focus on VR, and then it kind of moved into a new space, but it was all UGC and it was a lot of fun. I really needed something that focused on kind of what was next for me, and kind of making and focusing on a game that maybe skewed a little younger than and kind of pivot out of VR into a new space. decided that I was going to step into a new role and started working at Meta Arcade for a dear friend of mine, David Reed, and that focus was on sort of a tool that allowed people to tell stories using any genre that they'd like, and I'll kind of create a choose your own adventure style digital experience, mobile PC. Again, with startups, we got to kind of take the good, you take the bad, and right now it's kind of incubating still. And now I'm doing work in the tabletop space, which is closely aligned with what I was doing with Meta Arcade, but doing working on some incredible IPs and creating some influencer programs, and I say influencer stuff and I hate that, it makes me want to vomit, but connecting with people who love the IPs and are really into it, what's happening in the tabletop space, RPG tabletop stuff like The Expanse and Void Mutants and Masterminds and a bunch of stuff, and being able to kind of help grow the community of fans around that and seeing what we can do to kind of keep them excited and engaged and have some ownership. So that's where I'm at now, plus some other secret kind of stuff going on the side that's not quite ready to announce. I got heavily involved in kind of some progressive politics and working hard in that space, and I don't want to pull out my my crate and step on up to start preaching the importance of universal health care or any of that kind of stuff. Though that is all real crucial and important in this time. But I'm looking forward to hanging out with really good friends and doing really good things.
Awesome. I got one final question that's kind of related to MXO, and then I kind of want to get into if you want to talk about what's up for the future. Considering your experience in the field of online games, maybe you can answer this question or give some insight. The hope is that the Matrix Online is sitting on a hard drive somewhere in some storage facility somewhere. Then there are the pessimists who think, well, it's probably just deleted. Thoughts on that? Any hope for source code being released so that the emulator could be completed or worked on, and et cetera, et cetera?
So you are a great representative of people who had an experience with a title in a game world, the MMO space, really made some significant impacts on people, and knowing that it got shut down, you want to know where's the data, where are the bits and bytes, and can it be found and kind of brought out, and you are speaking the same kind of language as the folks who like City of Heroes, City of Heroes, City of Villains, COX as it's called, but at the time I will tell you that people behind the scenes did not like calling it COX, for various reasons, but not the least of which being it spells Cox. But the other thing is that data, that stuff, is required to be saved, and I know it exists out there somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know who's got it. I know that there are services that take and hold on to data and store it in a very special place. And this was before any real strict sort of user data and privacy stuff came around. But at the end of the day, I believe that data lives somewhere. Will it be released? Not on purpose, and certainly not by anyone I know. It is one of those things where the Matrix as an IP is an important sort of cultural benchmark. They're going to save that stuff, but they're also going to be very litigious about people who are that you can get into a lot of trouble. So one day will they release it as a sort of thank you for your continued sort of adoration and support of what happened there? I hope. Maybe. There's only one way to know, and that's for folks who love it to make a lot of noise about it and to inundate WB with questions. Find that Jace Hall somewhere. He's out there doing some stuff. Bug him. He's on social media all the time talking about things. gather your folks and make it known that you care and want to be a part of resurrection, and they may owe you some fan service. So could be, maybe not. I have no idea. But things happen because people care, and if you get your people together and you make noise and you make polite, kind, thoughtful ovation, sort of reaching out in a way that isn't rude or abusive, but hard to ignore, you'll get a response of some kind. It may be no, it may be yes. But yeah, that's how you get it done.
Awesome, good advice. You think moving forward, are you aware of the rumors about like a Matrix prequel starring Michael B. Jordan as Morpheus?
I literally found that out from y'all. So yes, I'm aware where it might have started or how it could have. There's always a kernel of truth to some of these things, these rumors that come out. I'd love to dig into it and to talk more to the people who found it, and we are all through our association and even people listening to this rambling nonsense that I'm sharing. At the end of the day, we're all 1 degree, if none degrees, of separation from the answers to these questions or the truth behind what actually was going on there. And again, like I say, there are no original ideas right now, and so I'm betting you somebody somewhere is looking at the Matrix IP and thinking, what stories can we tell? Players have a lot. Players, I'll say, enthusiastic, connected, passionate. Matrix believers in the IP, they make the difference. That is how shows are saved. That is how IPs get released. That is how information becomes reality. And so, honestly, if it is to be true, a big part of making it true will be getting your crew together, getting them out there, and saying, no, we want this. We need it. We're passionate about it. Take a page from the Star Trek, fans. Arguably one of the first real hardcore, nerdcore fan folk. But the Star Trek is a movement, and so good that the Matrix sort of mythos, and it's kind of up to you to make people realize it's important enough to let it happen.
Yeah. So, future projects, anything you want to talk about?
Well, no, I'm working on some, like I said, I'm working on a podcast with a congressional candidate, ran for Washington State Congressional District 9, Sarah Smith, who is both a delight as a human and a wonder to behold as a leader. Got a lot of commitments to local Seattle politics, but one of the things that I do want to offer in the future, less verbosely discussing very specific event stuff, because I'm going through all of these event files and these event things, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and there are a lot of great people who are a part of making those things come true, and so being able to introduce you to some of those folks and have them talk about their experiences. And I'd also like to figure out the person that named me Tamarind as my call sign, and referred to me in that way in the stories that they would write. So there's a lot of people who made the live events program happen, and have a deep love for the people that enjoyed that work, and probably have some things and some deeper insights into some of those Cypherite storylines and some of the other things that were going on that I have forgotten because I am old and also easily confused.
Cool, man. Very, very cool. I appreciate all the time. I have an item that I'd like to send to you. If maybe off air we'll communicate, and I can maybe send you out something as a thank you for resurfacing and delighting us all with your Matrix Online experiences and stories, and of course the work that you put in.
I appreciate that. I do. You certainly do not have to do that. The coming back and being able to tell a story is more reward than I was actually prepared to sort of come to terms with. But it's been a joy. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Back in early launch, they gave everybody beta gear, if you tested the beta version of the Matrix Online. So I've started making some of these real world items, and I've got a nice beta hat. It's as accurate as possible. I put a lot of time into the design, and I'd like to send that to you.
I would love that. Are you telling me that it is a real world representation of the beta hat in game?
Yes, it is.
What? That is very generous, and I'm absolutely, thank you. That would be phenomenal. I'm that would be great, and I will wear it. I have awful hair and a weird head shape, so a hat sounds.
It's kind of weird. I wear it out in public, and I'm like, I don't know if anyone knows what this sign means, but I don't like going around telling everyone that I'm like a beta male, but it's beta. It's Matrix Online, so.
Yeah, right. I know. I mean, like, honestly, wearing it means you're alpha. So.
Damn right.
I love it. That's great. Well, looking forward to seeing it, and looking forward to other opportunities. So people who are listening and have questions and all that kind of stuff, I can't promise I can answer them all, but I know that there are other people that worked on the game that would love to speak to how important it was to them, knowing how important it was to the players that participated. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as people want to hear, I will keep making these things.
Oh, keep on keeping on it. Much love to everybody. Much love to everybody who is still around and still engaged, because it's nice to see that it was as important to the people that were kind of getting involved, and it left as indelible a mark on their gaming lives as it did on our working lives. So yeah, really, really awesome.
Well, I feel like the community is still surviving around the emulator right now.
Yeah.
Have you been in the emulator yet?
I haven't. I would love to check that out and maybe do a stream and have you walk me through kind of what's going on there. My understanding is that it's maybe not the full featured experience, but that it continues as a work of love and no monetary gain and no commercial profit, but a space where
none
people
whatsoever.
get to kind of go and experience what they love.
It's good for nostalgia. It works pretty well as far as moving around. It's as if you could hack the Matrix and show up wherever you want and teleport wherever you want, and you can still hyper jump and run around. One of the most important aspects of, I would believe, any MMO is tailoring your character to look the way you want, and you have unlimited access to that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to jump in, and we're going to have to schedule a date to kind of sit down and have a bunch of folks come in. I saw T-Bone pop in from the Furious Angels, and a bunch of other folks that I had not talked to for a long, long time. And I just saw them, and I'd love to hear some of their stories, even if we're just, maybe not recording all of my blab, and giving other people an opportunity to share why it meant so much to them. That to me seems like something we ought to do sooner than later.
All right. Well, I look forward to it, and I thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye now. Okay, big thanks to Troy Hewitt for coming on to the podcast and sharing all of those stories and your experiences with Monolith and Matrix Online. You can follow the man Troy Aether Hewitt on Twitter at meta_Troy. That's META_TROY on Twitter. There's a link in the show notes. Get alerts because he's got some stuff coming out, and he's gonna be back to share some more stories. Also, follow me on all the things, Vesuveusmxo. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So get alerts. Pick a platform and get the alerts because I got a lot coming out. I got stuff on Instagram daily. I got stuff on YouTube monthly, and those things also go out to Twitter and Facebook. So hit me up and let me know, who do you want to hear from next? You want some more podcasts? You want a special video on YouTube? Do you want a special in-game item? You want me to make that and have that available? Hit me up. Let me know on Instagram. I've got a lot going on Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel where I'm going to be adding some episodes of my serial, The Matrix Online Revisited, videos every month until the end of the year. Right now I'm in the middle of the Pandora's Box arc, so I got part 2 coming out. Check out part 1. I also got an industrial quest. When you follow me on Instagram, you can click through the link in the bio. I've got some cool stuff on sale, some beta hats, some beta shirts. And I got some more cool stuff coming out. Awakening sunglasses, assassin masks, Pandora's boxes full of all the real world items that you would collect in the game. So check out that Instagram, plus daily MXO screenshots and content. Alright folks, that's going to do it for me. So for Troy Aether Hewitt, this is Vesuveus, shutting down.